regardless of intent, emotional manipulation is emotional manipulation. And like I said, if we want to look at these arguments rationally, their emotional appeal and the way they're presented must be scrutinized as well. So now that we've done this, I hope that the viewer is able to view these arguments a bit more rationally, with emotional appeal understood and biases acknowledged.
It is good to understand emotional appeal. It is good to acknowledge bias. And now let's take a look at this video rationally. Welcome to Talk of Christ. I'm Steve. Now, I'm a fan of Drew and his channel, Genetically Modified Skeptic. He typically makes good, well-reasoned videos with high production values. And although I'm a believer, I personally enjoy engaging with his arguments and his presentations. Obviously, since I haven't let his arguments convince me to be an atheist yet, I must have my own views and counterpoints. Drew recently made a video that's currently titled 3 Arguments for God That Are Not About God, and I wanted to share my thoughts on it. The entire purpose of Drew's video seems to be to make theists, and anyone who might be persuaded by them, aware of the potential for bias and emotional appeal that's found in some arguments for the existence of God. And to that I say, yeah, so what else is new? I straightforwardly acknowledge that when discussing God and morality, intuition and emotions play an outsized role. According to Aristotle, emotions are an original and integral part of virtue ethics. Emotions are an inherent part of our moral reasoning and being, and therefore they should be an inherent part of any moral deliberation. Now, theists like me recognize that one reason we believe in God is because of the God-shaped hole in our hearts. Humanity apparently evolved, whether under the guidance of God or not, to experience existential dread or an emotional fear of death and the unknown, and a basic morality or an emotional desire for justice and fairness. We develop our system of morality based on how certain actions make us feel. We feel bad when we hurt others. We feel good when we help others. And from this, we intuit that hurting others is morally wrong and helping others is morally right. In the same way, we might feel good as we think about and reason about God and believe in God, and we might feel bad when we don't. And even Drew acknowledged that he had these kinds of emotions and these experiences, that emotions were a huge part of his reasoning when he was a theist. As Aristotle says, when it comes to the question of what is moral, and I would say to the question of whether or not God exists, we naturally draw conclusions based on our emotions. We assume that we evolved a God-shaped hole because it feels better when we believe in a God that fits that hole than when we don't. Now, is that an emotional argument? Yes. Is there a problem with that? I don't think so. Drew invites us to approach the discussion more rationally and to set aside our emotions.
Ideally, the arguments we've discussed should be accepted or rejected based on their logical validity and soundness.
I agree that logical reasoning is an important foundation. Now, the unwary viewer might assume that having attacked the emotional bias of theists, that Drew is going to present a logical argument against them in this video, because he says ideally that's how we should resolve these issues.
This discussion is not meant to show that the arguments in question are logically invalid or unsound. While I do think these arguments are unsound, that is not for any reason that I'll present here.
Forgive the bad editing. I wish I had the production team that Drew does. But in other words, Drew acknowledges that his video is not going to logically invalidate the theists' arguments. So taking the video at face value then, all that it does in about 15 minutes is to say, hey, these arguments are emotional. Theists use them and they like them because these arguments make them feel good. And what's wrong with that? Even Drew says,
leading with arguments which are meant to be intuitively convincing most of all is common in discourse on philosophy, religion, politics, and any other subject.
In other words, he knows that intuitive emotional arguments are an inherent part of our moral reasoning and being, and we like to use them when we are having discussions. When we debate morality and the existence of God, we can't just turn off our emotions. We believe in God and in morality precisely because of our conscious emotions. Drew presents 3 examples of what he calls emotional manipulation, and he cleverly suggests that the theists' arguments are unacceptable because they lead to a kind of circular reasoning.
Not only does God exist because morality is objective, but morality is objective because God exists.
And he makes two more such arguments about human consciousness and about the fine-tuning of the physical constants that govern the cosmos. And we marvel that we have the consciousness to appreciate and comprehend some part of the vast cosmos and the physical constants that made our consciousness possible in this universe. Theists see these miracles as evidence of God, and they exist because God exists, and God must exist because they exist.
We want to believe the argument's premises because of their emotional appeal, so we accept them intuitively. We believe the alternative to this is despair. Those premises are used to support the existence of God. Acceptance of God's involvement in these things provides explanation and justification for these ideas. This creates a process of reciprocal justification. God exists because these premises are true, and these premises are true because God exists.
The implication throughout the video is that there is something wrong with this kind of reasoning. Drew is suggesting that there's something wrong with involving your emotions in your moral deliberations, and that there's something wrong with the reciprocal justification that God exists because the premises are true, and the premises are true because God exists. But that's not true. There's nothing wrong with arguments for God and morality being emotional, and there's nothing logically invalid about reciprocal justification. Drew knows this. Remember, he said that he was not going to present in his video reasons that these arguments are invalid or unsound. Therefore, he knows that reciprocal justification does not invalidate the arguments. And he presents reciprocal reciprocal justification as if it does invalidate the arguments. Just as Drew did not attack the logic of these arguments in his video, I'm not using my video to defend their logic, except to say that all biconditional statements, or if and only if statements, can be reduced to this kind of reciprocal justification. And it's not circular reasoning or detrimental to the argument. So the statement, if P then Q, and if Q then P, can also be said, P if and only if Q. So if the polygon has four sides, then it is a quadrilateral. And if it is a quadrilateral, then the polygon has four sides. If my heart is beating, then I'm alive. And if I'm alive, then my heart is beating. And if I tell myself sad things, then I feel sad. And if I feel sad, then I'm telling myself sad things. These statements may sound circular, but that doesn't make them invalid. They are simply expressing a relationship between two things that are very nearly equivalent or very closely related. All quadrilaterals are polygons with four sides, and all polygons with four sides are quadrilaterals. Humans with beating hearts are, in at least one way, alive, and living humans must have some kind of a beating heart. And our sad emotions come from our sad thoughts. Our sad thoughts lead to sad emotions. To a theist, God is so connected and related with morality and consciousness and the fine-tuning of the cosmos that if there is objective morality, well, God exists. And if God exists, then there is objective morality. Also, if we follow this kind of reasoning and what Drew says is happening with these arguments to its conclusion, he's suggesting that if universal constants are so finely tuned so as to produce conscious humans, well, then God exists, is what the theists are saying. And he flips that and suggests that if God exists, well, then universal constants are so finely tuned to produce conscious humans. And that doesn't actually work. I don't think that's what Drew's saying. Instead, when he makes an argument against this consciousness or against the fine-tuning of the cosmos, his argument is not that it sounds like there's reciprocal justification, but his argument is simply that we only believe it because it makes us feel good. It's self-congratulatory. We want to believe that we're special, and so we like these arguments. We believe this because of what it says about us. Well, again, what's wrong with that? We're built to have that kind of reasoning, that kind of emotional reasoning. And we believe in these things because the alternative doesn't feel right. that when we think about not being something special, it doesn't feel as good. And the fact is that so far as we know, over the millions of years of evolution or creation of this earth, as well as the cosmos so far, we are the only beings that exist with consciousness to comprehend our place in the cosmos and to comprehend just exactly what has come about and what has transpired to bring us to this point. Doesn't that make us special?
I discuss the emotional appeal of these arguments, and they say that I'm purposely distracting from the real issue, the logic of the argument. I say that they were the first to present these arguments in an emotionally charged way, and they say I'm engaging in an ad hominem attack.
So, Drew, I don't think you're engaging in any ad hominem attacks just by saying that theists are emotional. I think that theists are emotional, and I think that's okay. In this case, I think your suggestion that emotions somehow invalidate the logical argument is a distraction from the logical argument. Yes, the theist argument may be tied to emotions, but there's nothing wrong with that. Yes, our existential dread is diminished when we believe in the divine. Yes, we feel better about the morality of the world when we believe in God. And yes, we feel better about our place in the cosmos when we believe that God exists and has created us for some kind of a purpose. Theists have no problem acknowledging all of these things. The only reason that I can think of that an atheist would want to explicitly point out, hey, you guys are using your feelings. These are emotional arguments. They just make you feel good, and you just like them because they feel good, is because the related atheist arguments do not make you feel good. And they want you to be okay with that. They want to be able to present their atheist arguments that have no such emotional tie-in and help you to feel okay that you are denying the emotional negativity that you feel when you accept those arguments. Now, for some reason, we didn't evolve to feel good emotionally in an atheist universe. We evolved with a God-shaped hole in our hearts.